an area you got to be clear on. What does contraindicated exercises mean?
Exercise that you really shouldn't do. Or
that are ill-advised or not recommended. Yeah.
Injury prone.
Okay, so give me some contraindicated exercises for athletes.
All depends on the sport, right?
Okay. Pick a sport, pick an athlete, tell me what's contraindicated.
You wouldn't do a hang clean with not necessarily with a basketball athlete.
Okay. Hang clean.
Or power clean.
Either way, why not?
That's really their life isn't trying to lift something over their head, and I don't know. The basketball only weighs a pound.
Okay.
Or two.
So if you go into pretty much every college weight room in the country, their basketball athletes will be doing some form of hang clean.
Oh, they will.
Okay. But what you're saying is not necessarily wrong. I'm just saying that you probably won't get a job in a college weight room if you go into your interview saying that unless you can justify it.
Okay.
So justify it, because I'm not saying you're wrong on it.
All right. It's not like they're trying to lift people up over their heads to try to dunk the ball every time.
That's true.
They're mostly lower body based, so they should be doing more squats, leg press, sport specific agility type workouts.
So the argument against that is going to be a hang clean or a power clean. You know the difference?
One, from the ground or.
So hang clean is from the ground. Power clean is basically the same thing, but it's above your knee. So you start here in a power position. Typically, most athletes start from a power position. It's a lot easier because you're here. All you have to do is triple extend through your hips to get into that position. And then a clean is the catch position, which is there. It's not a snatch. A snatch is overhead. Clean is here. So you're going to see most strength coaches like incorporating this, and their simple justification is, it's one of the highest power output exercises we can do, which is true and false at the same time. It's true if it's done perfectly. And 99% of high school and college athletes cannot do it. Their flexibility is terrible. Their stability through the hips and the lower body is terrible. And they don't have the range of motion to get the position we want. Therefore, most college athletes, most high school athletes that try this cannot produce the power outputs that Olympic weightlifters can produce. Olympic weightlifters can produce super high power outputs from this position, triple extend up through the hips. They can generate huge forces in bar speeds, huge power outputs, and that's where all these strength coaches that aren't understanding that they're working with an athlete that isn't an Olympic level weightlifter can't produce that, and they're really wasting their time because they're putting them through a very technically difficult movement that they're struggling with, that they're usually loading them up too heavy on, so that they're pulling from the wrong areas, they're recruiting the wrong muscle patterns. Instead, their whole goal is, how do I get triple extension, which is a lower body movement. Remember, triple extension at the ankle, at the knee, at the hip, going from here to here. Just think of jumping. When you jump, you triple extend. You go from here to here. The easiest way to do that is to jump, or to do some form of weighted jump. You could use vests. You could use a medicine ball, drop and throw. That produces more power output for 99% of your athletes than any hang clean or power clean will ever do. So you have to be smart about when do you use it. So the other argument will be, well, I want them to work on decelerating. So as the bar comes here, they have to decelerate under the bar for the catch position. Deceleration is really important for all sports. You need to learn how to slow down, how to stop quickly and effectively from an injury prevention standpoint. So there is a benefit there for doing the clean from a deceleration standpoint. The problem is to get them to accelerate fast enough and to do the movement correctly. Most of your athletes can't. So that would be the argument against not doing it, more so than just saying that it's a bad exercise, because it's not a bad exercise. It's a really good exercise, but it just can't be done by most of the athletes you're going to work with. And that's the same with most of these contraindicated exercises, because there really isn't a bad exercise out there. It's whether the athlete can handle it, whether it's appropriate volume, intensity, duration, all those factors. But in general, there's a few broad stroke concepts that you're going to have to, because you'll get asked this at job interviews. What do you think of Olympic lifts, cleans and snatches for my swimmers? How would you answer that question? If you're going into a job at, let's say, a high school, they're looking to hire you as a strength coach for a high school, and you got to work with 10 teams or 12 teams. And the swim coach is on the interview panel, and he asks you the question, what is your philosophy on, Olympic lifts for my swimmers? How do you answer that?
Based off time, probably wouldn't want to. You tell them to work other safer activities, work on triple extension for getting off the blocks. Based off not having the time to perfect their technique, you wouldn't really want to get them into that.
Yeah.
Unless you're starting with them as a freshman, then you can have them all up to the senior. You have 4 years to work on it.
Yeah,
and possibly.
Yeah, and that's a very fair response. You always want to don't poo-poo an exercise or don't denigrate a movement because you don't know what the person asking you's philosophy is on it. You want to be clear in your mind though what you would do in those situations, and that what you said is like for most of them I wouldn't do it because of the time, the expertise, the technique needed. But there may be the occasional athlete, if I know I'm going to have them long enough, I may be able to teach them up so that when they get to college, they're going to be really proficient, which could help them in their college career as well. So you may give an answer like that where you're sort of hedging a little bit. You're fence sitting. Anytime you're in a job interview, being able to fence sit a little bit is pretty good because you don't know what the answer that the interviewer wants. So you may be all adamant and real strong on one side, but the problem is if that person interviewing you is strong on the other side, that may be the end of your job interview, which is fine because you don't typically want to work in an environment if you're dead set believing or your philosophy is very strong here. You don't want to work with people that have philosophies that are completely opposed to what you want to do. It's never a fun working environment. Doesn't mean they're right or you're right. It just means you got different philosophies about how to approach training athletes. Okay, so see where we're going with this? So I may ask you questions like that. You're in a job interview and I may give you 5 questions and you may have to answer those 5 questions in the job interview. So that may literally be one of your questions is you're sitting here in front of a committee. It could be a baseball coach, it could be the head strength coach, it could be the athletic trainer and the athletic director. And as part of your job interview, they want you to answer these 5 questions or these 3 questions. It may not be 5, it may be 3, but they're going to be questions like that. Would you do this exercise with these athletes? How would you set up a day of game schedule for basketball? How would you do this? See where we're getting at there? It's really testing your knowledge of can you put all this stuff you've learned over the last quarter or so, plus everything else is in your head of yours, and put it down on paper in a succinct way that hopefully can get you a job. Questions? Pretty much that's the stuff you're going to have to go through. So it's not going to be out of the box stuff. It's going to be pretty straightforward. The question is how accurately can you answer it, and can you always feel like you've answered the question of why? After you write down your first draft of your answer, read it back and say, where would someone ask me the question why, and is that answered later in that paragraph somewhere? You should be able to answer multiple whys. You pick that because of this, you pick this because of that, and go through that process each time. Okay, that's basically all I've got. Any other questions you want to ask? Okay, so reminder, we're done with class. It's time to study up this week. I'll send it out on Monday. You'll get Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to get it done. I'll have a full instruction page. Don't wait till the last hour to submit. always happens. Your computer breaks, you don't get internet access, you lose your file. I don't care. There's no do-overs. Okay, so make sure you submit the morning of when it's due. That would be my suggestion. Just in case something doesn't work, you have at least half a day to go run and find a computer. Save your file in 2 places. So in case you lose your computer, you lose your file, save it on the cloud, email it to yourself. Make sure you've got it in multiple locations, because I'm not listening to any excuses about I lost it, my computer crashed, I got a virus. I don't care. Okay, you guys are old enough to know how to have multiple backups these days.
This will be on Blackboard in the content section.
Yeah. Yeah. So and then email will go out to everyone as well. Make sense? Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure. Enjoyed working with everyone this quarter. Hopefully, I see some of you next quarter. I'm doing, I think it's the recovery class next quarter, or maybe the technology. There's